Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for joining this virtual overnight event. This is our faculty panel, and as we give people a few more minutes to join us in the webinar, I just wanted to kind of engage our panel in a little bit of conversation about how you're spending your time in the midst of the quarantine. What are some of the things you've been up to? Adela, you want to get us started?
Sure. Well, mine is not very exciting, but it's delicious. I've been cooking a lot over the past 2 weekends, trying to turn my worries and anxieties about what's happening into kind of a hands-on therapeutic activity that I learned from my mother and my grandmother, and that I share with my brother and my uncle. So it's also a way to kind of be with family while we're socially distanced.
Yeah, that's so great. What do you like to cook?
I've been really going to comfort food. So I've been making mac and cheese. I made bread muffins. I made my mom's favorite pasta recipe, which has chile poblano and prosciutto. So I've been doing a bunch of different things.
Yeah,
yes.
Great.
Yeah.
What about you, Corey? What have you been up to?
I've been cooking by necessity, not necessarily I enjoy it. I've been getting a lot of reading done. That's been kind of nice. I rediscovered that I enjoy just reading and kind of zoning everything else out. I didn't have, I guess, time for that for a little while.
Nice.
And I have been binge watching RuPaul's Drag Race.
Oh, that's great.
All past seasons are
available. Oh, wow, that's impressive.
Time with a Star subscription of only $5 a month. So
wow.
I started from the beginning, and I've been working my way through them real fast.
Nice.
That's amazing. What drew you to RuPaul's Drag Race?
My girlfriend and I really like to watch it together.
Okay.
And so it's been a good way to kill time, because once I get started on that show, like, we can just
keep going and going.
Yeah. Nice. All right. Yeah, Neal.
Hey, I've also been cooking. I've also discovered that I usually cook dinner in our house, but now I've also had to add lunch to my repertoire.
Oh.
And so I've rediscovered ramen. And
that's great.
It's great, especially when I have a lot of meetings, it's like, hey. But the secret is you get miso soup mix and use that as the base, and then add the ramen noodles. It's like a million times better.
Nice.
Yeah.
No,
that's
little
nice.
Secret there. Life hack.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've also been binge watching things, of course. Recently Dracula on Netflix. I love that.
Is that a series? I'm sorry, I don't.
It's like it was a 3-episode mini series kind of.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it's very it's sort of the campy horror genre.
Okay.
That's our fave.
That's your fave?
That's one of my faves. Yeah, I love campy
nice.
horror.
Huh. Interesting.
Well, I've been sort of sucked into the whirl of the Tiger King, as many other folks. So I will admit to that. It's been really fascinating and interesting, particularly from some of the academic lenses that I've got in reading it, and it's oddly pleasurable in some maybe interesting / troubling ways. We're about 3 minutes in, so I think that's enough. That's given as given folks enough time to sort of pop in. And as we get started, I wanted to introduce myself. I am Dr. Jen Smith. I'm the Dean of Inclusive Excellence at PLU. I've been here for 14 years now, and I also teach in our Gender, Sexuality, and Race Studies program. To get us started, I'd like to have each of our panelists introduce themselves by sharing your name, your pronoun if you'd like to share that, the department you teach in, and how many years you've been at the university.
What are we starting with?
Let's start with Adela. We started with her earlier, so let's go there.
Of course. So my name is Adela Ramos. I am a professor of English literature. My main field of expertise is 18th century British literature, but I'm also excited to be the incoming chair of environmental studies, and I also coordinate the Digital Humanities Lab at PLU. I will be celebrating my 10th year at PLU come August. So I'm very excited about that as well. And my pronouns are she, her, and hers.
Corey?
I am Corey Cook. I'm a social psychologist. I teach in the Department of Psychology. As a social psychologist, I'm not a shrink. I study human behavior scientifically, and I also teach courses for the Holocaust and Genocide Studies minor. And I do some work with the Department of Nursing and their Doctor of Nursing Practitioner program. I've been here for 3 years, and my pronouns are he, him.
Great. All right. Neal.
Hello, everyone. Live here from Federal Way, Washington. I'm Neal Yakelis. I'm a professor in the chemistry department here at PLU. I'm an organic chemist. So I most often teach general chemistry as well as organic chemistry. And my pronouns are he, him. In this, I will be wrapping up my 15th year of service here at PLU.
Great. Thank you all so much for being with us today for the faculty panel. One of the questions that I'd like to start with is what do you like, or how do you prefer to be referred to when your students are talking to you? Do you want them to say doctor or professor, Mr., Ms., or even your first name? And as you're thinking about how you want to respond to that question, I'd just like to remind everyone that you can continue to submit questions to this live event by clicking on the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen there. We'll be answering your questions for the next half hour or so. If we don't get to them today, please know that someone from admissions will certainly follow up with you very soon. So in terms of our panelists here, how do you like students to refer to you? And we'll start with Neal for this one.
Okay. In my department, the professors usually go by doctor or professor. So Professor Yakelis or Dr. Yakelis. Sometimes I also answer to Dr. Yak because that's easier.
Great. Corey?
I also prefer to go by Dr. Cook. In the Department of Psychology, we all refer to each other around students as doctors, so that students are in the habit of it. In the classroom, I don't mind if you just say professor, I'll know who you're talking to, so that works as well. Students have started calling me Cook. I don't know where that came from. I always feel like I'm in trouble, so I try to correct them and say Dr. Cook, please.
Yeah. Great. What about you, Adela?
I am going to try to keep this one short because whenever my students ask me this question, I actually have a long conversation with them about why some people prefer to go by their first name. When I got to the English department at PLU, most of my colleagues went by their first name, and that was actually the way I preferred to do things. But I think I've been thinking a lot with other colleagues in different institutions about what it means to have your title before your name and how that sometimes might be perceived as wanting to like appear as an authority and create distance, but also how it can actually be a way for students to know that we are experts in certain things and that there's a lot of value in that, and that we're not trying to create distance, but we're actually trying to say, look, you can do this as well. So recently, I've been going more by Dr. Ramos or Professor Ramos, but if you call me Adela, I'm fine with that as well.
Great. Well, I will follow your suit, and I will refer to you all as doctor here on out for the rest of the seminar. I know that one of the things that many faculty members try to do at the university is to make it explicit to students how they want to be referred to, so that they're not wondering all of the time. But the best rule of thumb, if in doubt, always go with doctor or professor. Good rule of thumb to follow. So one of the first questions we have here I see is, why did you choose to teach at PLU? And for this one, I'll ask Dr. Cook to get us started since he's the newest one at the university.
All right. So I actually think I didn't choose PLU so much as PLU chose me. I moved to this region, to the Northwest, for a different job at a different university. And through community events, I'd actually been invited to PLU to give a talk. I had some collaborations with some professors here in the psychology department. And when I saw that there was an opening, I jumped at it. And lucky for me, I ended up being on a short list of people who were invited to interview here, and I got the job.
Great, thanks.
Great.
And I wonder if Dr. Yakelis, you might chime in here as well, since you've been here the longest.
Okay. Yeah, it's been a while since I joined the PLU community, but I think that originally, my plan has been to work at a liberal arts university, or one that embraces the liberal arts, because I have found that I feel that's the best model for undergraduate education that I've experienced through my direct observations at both the undergraduate and graduate levels. And as soon as I interviewed at PLU, I felt like I was welcome here. That I felt it was a very authentic community, and I felt that especially the students were very, just extremely, they seem very thankful for the opportunities they have here, and the interactions with faculty are very valuable.
Great, thanks. I think I'll move on to the next question. Have Dr. Ramos start us in the response to this one. And someone wants to know, what's your favorite class to teach at PLU?
Oh, well, I think my favorite, I'm going to say it's not so much a specific topic, but it's the Gen Ed classes that I really enjoy teaching. And the reason why I enjoy teaching these classes, the general education classes, which are usually the classes that have a 200 number on them and that allow you to cover your liberal arts requirements. I enjoy those the most because even though I really enjoy teaching English majors and environmental studies majors, these are the classes where I actually get to meet students from all over the university. And because most of the students in those classes aren't necessarily going to major in literature, that raises the stakes for me, because I want that one literature class that they're going to take to be amazing, or as amazing as I can make it, and memorable. So it really pushes me as a teacher, and it asks me to remind myself why literature matters. And it also has really allowed me to create connections, really long-lasting connections with students with whom I keep in touch after they've graduated. So I really love those classes and really look forward to teaching them.
Yeah. Well, that's a great. What about you, Dr. Yakelis or Dr. Cook? Do either one of you want to share what's your favorite class to teach?
Go ahead, Corey.
All right. So I actually was hired to teach research methods and statistics, and those are not my favorite courses to teach. I get real happy when I get to teach in my content area. So when I get to teach social psychology courses, and just flat old social psychology, the class is a lot of fun because we study all the things that make human behavior weird and interesting. But I also got to teach a course that I called the Psychology of Good and Evil this past year. And that was a lot of fun because we just got to spend every single day kind of, using science to try to understand why people would do really great things, but also pretty terrible things. And so it was both important, I think, and the students got a lot out of it. And those are the fun classes for me to teach.
Yep. Great. Thank you. Dr. Yakelis, do you have a favorite class?
I think, definitely, well, I have a few favorites probably, but sure. One of my organic chemistry lab is probably my favorite class to teach because it's about a 4 to 4.5 hour lab course for our class meetings.
Wow.
And during that, we spend a lot of time together. So I get to know my students very well. There's a lot of just chatting in lab, learning together in community. But it's also often a time, organic chemistry is a time where students who are interested in medicine or pharmacy or things are really discerning things and questioning things. And we can kind of talk through that and process that, it's just a really great opportunity to know my students more.
Yeah, your response made me think of, I have led quite a few study away programs. And one of the reasons why I love to do that so much is because you just get to interact with students in a different kind of environment and learn what they're interested in pursuing post PLU and how you can mentor them and support them and what it is that they're pursuing. And there's something about study away that helps facilitate that kind of relationship, which is really exciting.
Yeah.
We have a really awesome question here that is, what is your best advice to help first-year students prepare for the classroom at PLU? And let's have Dr. Yakelis seems excited, so let's have you start first.
My biggest tips would be to get ready. I would say definitely, say hi to your professors at some point, whether that be setting up an appointment at their office to say hi or just to meet them, because we really depend on that as a way to get to know everyone. We're learning a lot of new names at first, and I think that that's a way just to we know you more as a person.
Yeah.
Don't be shy, because that's why we're here. Also, I think don't be afraid to, don't feel isolated. Learn in community, form study groups, get to know other people on campus, because that's going to help you learn things so much more deeply.
Yeah, great. What about you, Dr. Ramos? Any advice for first-year students?
Absolutely. I think throughout my years at PLU and just my own years as a student, I think the best thing we can do as we enter the classroom for the first time, the college classroom, is to be open. I think one of the great things about PLU is that professors are really excited to challenge students to kind of shake your world in many ways. And I think the best way to make the most of that is to just come in being open and knowing that teachers have absolutely your best interests in mind. And also that openness also allows you to do what Dr. Yakelis is talking about learning in community. So making friends in the classroom. And maybe they won't be friends you hang out with outside of classroom, but they'll be friends that are kind of intellectual and academic friends. And that is also a different type of friendship that's really important to cultivate.
Yeah.
Great. What about you, Dr. Cook? Any pieces of advice for first-year students coming in to help with the transition?
Well, I thought about my own experience as a first year when I started, and I was paralyzingly shy. I was afraid to ask anybody for anything. I was afraid someone might find out that I didn't belong at college, or I don't know. And I know that sometimes you can't help but feeling that way, but I would say don't be afraid to reach out and communicate. So echoing what the others have said, you know, we love engaging with students. We love when students have questions. Like, don't be afraid to ask questions, and definitely push yourself sometimes out of your comfort zone to just talk with people, and make those connections, because, you know, I'm still friends with people I met way back then. And some of these connections will be lifelong, and some of them will just be invaluable for your time at PLU.
Yeah. I think some of those connections are forged out of the discomfort of being in an environment that is unfamiliar, and can create really strong bonds. So yeah, that's a great piece of advice. So there's a question here about workload, and someone wants to know, what is the workload like in your classes, and do you really give out 2 hours of homework each day? Let's have Dr. Ramos start with this one.
Are you sure?
Sure.
Yes, I do. I really take to heart the fact that those 4 years or 3 years or 2 years, depending on your specific trajectory as an undergraduate, are precious, and that really every day in the classroom and every day you're reading and writing and doing research at the lab counts. And so I also believe my students are up to that task. So I want to raise the bar for them and give them as much as I possibly can. And to echo what my colleagues were saying in response to the other question, PLU is a place where you have one-on-one support all the time. Yeah. So when things feel overwhelming, you have someone to go to that is going to give you support. So I feel like all of those things together say, 2 hours or more of homework.
Yeah. How about you, Dr. Yakelis? What do things look like in the world of natural sciences?
Well, I think that one of the things that may be especially different from a high school experience is that there is more out of class time balanced with in-class time. I think that you can only meet together as a group a certain number of hours a week, but your learning has to extend beyond that, and it has to involve some alone time, maybe reading or writing. But it could also, as we were mentioning, it could be group study time or talking about topics from class with your classmates. So I think that in that way, you can be learning even when you're eating dinner, you know, if you're talking about, you know, the book you're reading in class with some classmates or something like that. So I think that it's always a balance, and there's also going to be hills and valleys in every class throughout the term when things are, where there's more things due as opposed to less things due, and sort of planning out the rhythm, getting onto that rhythm is one of the big challenges, I think, as you start out to understanding that, how that's going to work in your schedule. But once you get onto it, I think it becomes very doable.
Yeah. I'm going to have Dr. Cook answer or start the answer to this next question. And it refers to something that our colleague Dr. Ramos referred to in her response to the previous question, which is, how often do you meet with students one-on-one, and what kind of support systems are in place for students' academic success?
So I have students in and out of my office kind of all the time. I have set time periods. My students know I'm in my office between classes. And I schedule one-on-one meetings for students who are doing research with me, or students who are working with me in our teaching apprenticeship, or students who are working on projects in my classes. But I also have just kind of an open door, kind of open office hours where students know I'm there. They can just pop in casually and ask me questions. But yeah, on a given day, outside of the classroom, I might end up having one-on-one meetings with anywhere between like 5 and honestly 15 students or so, just depending on the nature of where we're at in the term and what's going on in their classes and at PLU. So it's variable, but lots and lots of one-on-one meetings. And like Dr. Yakelis said, we're not in the classroom that much. We really spend more time putting in work outside of the classroom often than inside the classroom.
Yeah, I think related on that note, I wonder if Dr. Yakelis, you could talk about student faculty research in natural sciences. I know student faculty research is valued throughout the university and also practiced in humanities and social sciences as well, but it's got a particular kind of unique quality in natural sciences that I wonder if you could talk a little bit about.
Yeah, sure. I think that a lot of my colleagues in the natural sciences are involved with student faculty research in different ways. There is an intentional sort of summer program that's designed, a 10-week program where students have paid internships to work with faculty. But then we also help students find internships elsewhere if they're trying to explore some other areas maybe where research isn't going on campus. But yeah, for those summer, often I'm working with 2 to 3 students all summer on research, and it's full-time, sort of 40-hour weeks for 10 weeks. That's often the time we're putting in lab. It's sort of like a little trial to see what grad school is like in a lot of ways, or to try to explore that option. But I think that those students, I think they just generally, even the ones that are initially afraid of me for some reason, end up being I know. Well, it's the organic chemistry thing. It's a bad rep. I think that they become the students that I mentor, and I continue working with long after they graduate from PLU. And I have meetings right now. I've been having Google Meets with not only current students in my class, but alumni who are considering going to medical school or graduate school and things like that. And that doesn't end once you leave PLU.
Yeah. Dr. Ramos, I wonder if you could speak a little bit about the second part of that question, which is other support systems that are available to help students achieve academic success.
Sure, absolutely. Well, we have a wealth of different kinds of systems. So we have tutorials that are available in a range of different disciplines and for specific courses, and that is in the academic assistance kind of vein. We have the Student Success Network, which is really important, and where students can meet with advisors pretty much around the clock to decide what academic path makes more sense, or maybe you chose an academic path in the first year that then kind of doesn't really seem that great in the sophomore year. So, I mean, and we really value those kinds of U-turns or readjustments, however you want to think about them at PLU. So there's a whole team of people that are there for that kind of support. But because we do think of the student as a whole person, we're not just thinking about academics, we're also thinking about what kinds of communities of emotional and social support we have. And so we have the Diversity Center, which is a really awesome, thriving community. We have the Center for Gender Equity, which is another really incredible support for students. And we have clubs as well, which I think are really important. Some are for sports, some are for interests, like Shakespeare for the nerds like me. And we have as well a robust and I think increasingly so mental health and wellness system of support, which is both on campus and long distance. So I think that we really aim to cover all the areas in which our students might need support in order to be successful.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that point that students' academic success is reliant on their emotional and physical health as well. And so one of the things I know that we all strive to do as faculty is to provide resources to care for and be attuned to the whole student as well. Yeah. This is an interesting question on technology in the classroom. Someone wants to know, is it allowed in the classroom, and are students allowed to use their laptops to take notes? Let's start with Dr. Cook on this one.
All right. I waffle on technology in the classroom. I actually don't prefer it when I'm lecturing. And there often will be a designated note taker. And if there is, then I'll work with that student so that we know that that's their role. But I ask students to put their cell phones away, and I'll put my cell phone away, and I want them engaged in the activity that we're doing in the classroom. That said, I also, part of the learning we do in my classes often directly uses a computer. So I teach my stats lab in a computer lab, and we're working together to learn to code data and analyze data. And so for me, it's about the content. If it's content where we're being actively engaged in a conversation, I want you to put the electronics away so that we're interacting with one another. But if we're doing something where we're getting our hands dirty, so to speak, then we'll all be working on computers and technology together as well.
Yeah, I have a similar sort of context-specific policy for technology rather than one size fits all. Generally, I do ask folks to kind of put the laptops and cell phones away because so much of the class is discussion-based. And so it's hard to transcribe what other people are saying and then jump into the conversation. But I know that we made an explicit effort to use technology in the Beyonce class that I taught because we had a Beyonce hashtag. And so we would always kind of hashtag the class and tweet in the hopes that Beyonce would somehow respond to us. That never happened. But we also wanted to share what we were learning and doing in the class more broadly beyond it. So yeah, it's a kind of context-specific situation for me as well. What about you, Dr. Yakelis or Dr. Ramos? Any strong thoughts on technology?
I have lots of strong thoughts.
Okay.
But I'm sure Dr. Yakelis has better things to say. Do you have anything to say, Dr. Yakelis?
I think students use a variety of technology in my classes. In a lecture type format, I think that one thing that has become very popular is students using tablets, and then they can, when I have slides, they can annotate directly onto those, and that's worked really well for some students learning. I think it depends on really, your sort of personal learning style, as well as how easily distracted you are, and it's kind of discovering that about yourself.
Yeah.
But also I think cell phones have become, and especially with good cameras, have become a really important tool in the sciences for problem solving, because students can capture things on a whiteboard and then share it with others, or they can take pictures of homework problems and send them to me online so that I can give them feedback on where they're going wrong during a problem. And all of that has been great.
Yeah. So Dr. Ramos, I'll have you maybe kick us off on the next question here. It's not about technology, but it is about the first day of class. So someone is curious about, what does the first day of class normally look like?
Yeah. Yes, it is. Well, first of all, it's really exciting. And it's exciting because everybody in the room is nervous, not just you, the student, but also the teacher always, no matter how many times you've taught the class before. So it just has the special energy. And if you can, like for a moment, just step aside and enjoy that energy as much as it's possible. Obviously, it's a really exciting and hectic day, so it sometimes might be hard to do that. But if you can, that's great. And I think a general first day involves our teachers really trying to get to know students in the room. And so, I mean, obviously depending on the size of class, but in an English literature class, we'll usually do icebreakers. We'll try to get to know each other in some way that starts to create community from day one. I'll usually then move into either having a free writing activity that asks students to start to think about the topic that we're going to be discussing, or kind of the framing topic, of the course and sharing their answers to that, which is another way in which we start to not just to start thinking, but also start to get to know each other. And then we go over the syllabus in painful detail, partly because even though that can sometimes feel a little bit deadening or boring, it's because we really want you to know what you're getting into. And all of our teaching is really learner oriented. So it's really about you knowing what's going to happen over the next 4 to 5 months. What are the things you need to be aware about from the beginning? What resources do you have access to? What does it mean to use our learning management system, Sakai? All of those, and those questions about whether you can use laptops in the classroom or not, and why. So you really get to, it's about us getting to know you and you getting to know us. So it's a really, I would say the first day is about a connection, really a connection not only to the material, but also to each other. So.
Yeah, that's great. What about you, Dr. Yakelis or Dr. Cook? Is there anything special that you do on your first day?
I've done many different things over the years. I try to mix it up to keep it interesting for me. Sometimes I've had a snacktivity, I call it, where we have some candy or cookies or something, and then students have to look at the ingredients on the back and look up what these things are and why they're in there. And that's always, it's kind of fun to see, like, you know, how organic chemistry pops up in the real world. I've also had a time when I asked students to reflect on like what their success strategies were in the class, what things have worked for them in general chemistry, what things are they most worried about, and then students discuss that, and we come up with like, what are the biggest anxieties around this class and how can we deal with that as a class?
Yeah, that's great. I'm being mindful of time. So it looks like we have our final question here, and it's a fun one, evidently. That's what I'm told. What is the most interesting or random thing you have in your office?
Ooh.
This will say a lot about faculty, I think. So it's an excellent, excellent question.
Who's going to begin? Should I?
I can start.
Yeah, Corey, or sorry, Dr. Cook.
No, Corey, Dr. Cook.
Okay. So I'm going to pick two things. One, I actually have what is, it's basically a shrine of Charles Darwin things. So students have learned over time that I really, I love Darwin's work. I turn to it often for ideas, and I'm constantly learning still from a man who died, you know, well over 100 years ago. And so I had a small library of Darwin books, and then students started in appreciation buying me things. So now I have a little candle. That's awesome. And a bobblehead and like an evolving Darwin play set. And they keep accumulating on this shelf that I have in my office. And then the second is I have a mascot in my office. It's just a small stuffed wolfman. It's missing an arm that I bought at a Goodwill for $1. And I just love him so much. So I put him Halloween on my bookshelf, and then I couldn't ever take him down. So I have a little wolf man who protects me.
Nice.
That's great. What about you, Dr. Ramos? What do you have?
Well, this has nothing to do with my area of expertise. I have a clown in my office, a ceramic clown that a colleague who I really love left in my office one day to scare me because I'm a little bit afraid of clowns.
I wonder who would do that.
I have no idea. But that'll just tell you that faculty are friends as well. And I think that's definitely something I value about PLU. So one day I walked into my office and there was a scary clown sitting on my desk. And I haven't managed to return that clown. So it's still like in a little quiet corner in my office because even though I'm fine with being scared, I don't want to scare my students off.
Yeah.
So, and Corey, I'm coming to your office. That sounds awesome.
I thought you were saying that as a way to take the clown.
Well, maybe the clown will end up in Dr. Darwin's shrine as well. So, yeah.
What about you, Dr. Yakelis?
I think one of the things you would notice right away is I have buckets and buckets of organic model kits or molecular model kits, and I'm constantly fidgeting with them, and I encourage students to play with them while we're talking, and it helps me focus to have something to be sort of manipulating in my hands while I'm thinking. And I think that it's kind of like when you have like a big giant bin of Legos as a kid, and you have to sift through them to find the right ones. But I have like, so I'm constantly digging through boxes of molecular models trying to find, oh, I need a yellow atom, or I need this bond. And so I feel like it's kind of like having Legos in my office.
That's so great. One of the things I have in my office, and I'm hesitant to say this, but it is the most random thing that I have there, is a friend gifted me the bone that raccoons have in their penis. So raccoons have a bone in their penis, and so a friend saw it in a novelty shop and decided to buy it and give it to me. So it's about yay big, and it sits on my desk. It's a great conversation piece to help kind of mix up what people think they know about sex. So yeah, it's just the most random thing in my office. I can't thank the panelists enough for joining us and sharing their perspectives as faculty members, and for you, the audience, for sending us such fun questions and really amazing questions to answer to talk about the work that we do. I also would like to remind everyone to join us for our next virtual overnight event, which will be on Thursday, and looks like it's going to be covering study away and residential life. So again, thank you so much for joining us. Please take good care, and go Lutes!
Go Lutes!
Goodbye.